I'm Louis Gohmert. I'm a member of the United States Congress. Obviously, we're in my office here in Washington, D.C. I am a Christian. I study the Bible. In fact, I read in the Bible every day. And for one thing, as I told Prime Minister Netanyahu in August of 2009, when there was pressure, of course he had had pressure from most presidents, from most secretaries of state, who want as their legacy, for some reason, to say, I brought peace to the Middle East, aren't I wonderful? So the pressure is always there, and I wanted to make sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu understood. I would love to make sure the people of Israel understand that you can search the history of Israel, and I don't believe you'll ever find, I can't find a time when Israel has ever, going back to its inception, that it has ever given away land trying to buy peace, that land was not ultimately used as a staging area from which to attack it. And after a long pause, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, that's a problem, isn't it? And he's right. People were concerned, other members of Congress told me they were concerned because he had been involved in a giveaway back in the 1990s when he was Prime Minister before. But one thing should be very clear. Israel has never and will never buy peace by giving away land. It's miraculous. All of these prophecies being fulfilled from thousands of years ago, they're coming true. Well, how could that happen? It's miraculous. There must be the hand of God involved. Regardless of whether anyone believes in God or not, you can study the history. And for me, it was really such a wonderful thing to be in Hebron, where King David ruled the first 7 years before he moved to the city of David and up toward Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. How is that not Israeli land when King David was ruling in Hebron? His father Jesse, I stood at his tomb, David's father. How is this not Israeli land? They were there 1,600 years before a man named Muhammad, from whom Islam grew out. How does David not predate that? I know there are artifacts now being found in what is believed was the original city of David, many of them dating back to King Hezekiah's time, 700 years before the days of Jesus. How is that not predating any claim by anyone else? And if you look at who is truly free in that area, are the people truly free in Israel, or are they more free in the Palestinian land? And as I told, and I know he's resigned now, but Prime Minister Fayyad said, you have so many people being taught hatred toward Jews. We're giving you billions of dollars and you're not building enough housing for your people. It looks like you're refusing to use money to buy housing for people so that people will grow up angry, hating Jews. This is not helpful to the peace process. So I'm very embarrassed that once again, as has been true with both Republican and Democratic administrations here in America, once again, in this case, it's Secretary of State Kerry putting pressure once again on the Israelis to give in, release some prisoners who have killed Israelis. I'm a former judge, Chief Justice. I believe in justice. You don't release killers as an act of peace. They will likely kill again. This is not a good thing. America, we have released radical Islamists who have gone back and killed again. That's not very helpful to peace. Israel should, in my opinion, not be looking at releasing killers, but instead, I would suggest a new tactic for American state secretaries and presidents, and I'm not blaming just this administration, because I know Republicans and Democrats have done it alike, but a new strategy, instead of trying to coerce and twist the arms of Israeli leaders into making concessions, why don't we start by urging the PLO, you change your textbooks where you're not teaching hatred for Jews. That's where we will start. You change your holidays so they're not named after people who killed as many Jews as they possibly could. You change the names of so many things that are named streets that are named after terrorists who terrorized and killed Jews. Once you start doing those things, then we'll know you're serious about peace. But as long as you're keeping your people out of any kind of meaningful home, when you have money, you could do that. We provided you the money, American money, and we don't even have money to spare, and yet we're providing it to residents in PLO areas, and including in Gaza. You stop stirring up hatred. You stop importing rockets in Gaza. You stop doing the things that create war, and then we can have peace. I thought when Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to our joint session of Congress here, I've been pushing for over a year to get him invited. And Speaker Pelosi thought it was a good idea, but she never would extend the invitation. So when John Boehner became Speaker, I got a letter with lots of Republican support urging him to invite Netanyahu to come speak, because I wanted the world to see that the Prime Minister of Israel may get snubbed at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue here at the White House. He may get mistreated or snubbed. But when the leader of Israel comes to Congress and comes before a group that is dramatically divided on most every issue, and the leader of Israel speaks to this very divided group in Congress, the world will see this divided group stand up together in unison and repeatedly applaud the leader of Israel. That was my vision, that not a literal vision, but my hope was that this would show the world these are our friends in Israel, and there may be snubbing other areas of this town, but here in Congress, Republicans and Democrats stand firmly as friends of Israel. Now, the reason I thought that was so important, I had seen in May of 2010 that this administration here in Washington, for the first time, had sided with Israel's enemies in demanding Israel disclose all of their weapons. Well, that's a mistake. You can go back to Hezekiah, and the thing that, when I read that came back to mind was King Hezekiah. If you remember, King Hezekiah was confronted by Isaiah. He knew what he had done, but he confronted him. What have you done? Well, he knew the answer, but Hezekiah, and this is the Texas paraphrase of the scripture, but he says, I met these wonderful Babylonian leaders. They came over. I showed them all of our treasure. Now, in the King James translation, it doesn't say this, but it's part of the original Hebrew. He says, and I showed them all of the defenses we have in the armory. And Isaiah said, you fool, because you've done this, you lose the country. I don't care what country you are, you never show anyone all of your defenses. We're making that mistake under this administration in America. So I was very concerned about that, and that's when I knew we have got to show the world that we're Israel's friend. Because you can go back, it was within a couple of days of this administration siding with Israel's enemies and making that demand of Israel, that the flotilla came and challenged Gaza. You may say, well, just things happen, it's just mere coincidence. But I would point you to world history, where routinely you can find when a nation's strongest ally appears to be pulling away, that's when that nation's enemies moved against it. And there does not need to be any daylight between the United States and Israel. People around the world need to know we're friends, we're together, we will stand together. And that's why I was feeling so strongly, we need to send a message to the world, we stand with Israel. So that's why I pushed for a year to get Prime Minister Netanyahu invited, and I thought it was fantastic. Speaker Boehner extended the invitation. Leader Reid in the Senate joined in, and so, and actually, you may think this is inappropriate, but having met with Prime Minister Netanyahu a number of times, I thought I could say this. As he came down the aisle on his way up to the podium to speak, and he was being applauded, and he was shaking hands with people on the aisle as he came through, I shook his hand and I said, I don't know if you're aware, Prime Minister, but I've been pushing for over a year to get you invited, so don't screw this up. And I'm not going to screw this up. And then I added, and I also hope you'll remember that the whole time you're talking from the podium, that our national motto is printed right above your head. He said, I'd already thought about that. Our national motto is "In God We Trust." So it was the best speech. I've been here for 8.5 years, the best speech I've heard. And one of the things he pointed out that should never be forgotten is that if Israel lays down its weapons, there will be no Israel. If the Palestinians lay down their weapons, there will be peace. It's as basic as that. They lay down their weapons, and really, one of the biggest weapons of war is hate, and it's being taught in Palestinian schools. It's got to stop. That is the first step in the road to peace, and I hope that until that actually happens, there will be no concessions asked at all of Israel. Samantha Powers is one of those people who has shown through prior comments disregard and disdain for Israel, and an apparent belief that Israel is the problem to peace in the Middle East. Israel is not the problem to peace in the Middle East, and I think we would be far better served if we weren't sending tanks and jets to people who, from the things they've said, will likely one day kill Americans and Israelis with them. So I'm very sorry that Samantha Powers has been appointed. That has to be an affront to any intelligent Israeli, and I hope that we can make amends by having people that have more insight and wisdom when it comes to the Middle East than she does.